Welcome, everybody, to the Extra Podcast. This is episode 292. I'm a new voice. My name's John. I'm one of the pastoral interns here at Northview. It's good to be with you. Around the table, we have Jeff.
Hello.
Greg.
Yeah,
I cut you off.
Dr. Jeff for you.
Okay, Dr. Jeff.
Or Bucky Buck. What, your pick.
Dr. J. Bucky Buck, yep. Greg.
Hi.
And Andy.
Andy Steiger here. Good to be with you all.
Thanks for being here.
Andy's wearing a toque inside. You look like a hip-hop artist.
Do you know
look
what?
like you could be the next Usher at Northview.
I chose not to shave my head today because I just couldn't bring myself to do it.
Can I see what it looks like?
Yeah, hold on a second here.
This is going to be good radio. Oh, yeah, that's out of
I can
control.
totally see it.
Why are you concerned about your head not being shaved? There's just a little bit of barely any little stubble. Are you embarrassed by that?
I encourage
No, I'm
you?
not embarrassed
Let
by
me
it.
encourage you by telling you that that's not a big deal. That not one person on staff would say, hey, man, that's getting a little out of control.
Thanks, Greg. That actually really is affirming to me.
Yeah, good.
Well,
That's great. Thanks, Andy, for not shaving your head and giving us that glorious 2 minutes. Awesome. We're going to talk a little bit about Jeff's sermon from this last weekend.
Which was awesome, by the way, Jeff. Well done, man.
Playing hurt.
Yeah. You know what? Play hurt more often, man. It seems it goes well for you.
you know, when you're on drugs, you don't care.
You're one of those guys who, like, you can have half a baby aspirin and you're done for the day.
You know what? I actually am. I took
Wow.
I had to take Nyquil. That's the stuff. So first, if I take Nyquil,
Bad news.
well, on Sunday night, I was feeling so gross that I took Nyquil, which is a big choice for me because if I take Nyquil, it usually means that I'm going to sleep for the next 16 hours. Or if I'm awake during that time, I am useless. So yesterday, Monday, I took the NyQuil overnight, slept till 9 in the morning. My day off is on Monday. I woke up and I had a shower, and for the next 7 hours, I was with my wife. We went down to Bellingham to Costco there, and I don't remember most of it, to be honest. She was telling me halfway through, she was laughing she said, "Man, you are far easier to get along with on NyQuil."
Oh, we need to drug you up more.
So, yeah. So, but I was on Nyquil, but Nyquil has that kind of effect on me a little bit too. Nyquil's, I don't know. So the only way I could keep my nose from running and not coughing and stuff is I had to dry the old nose out. And so I was on Nyquil and some nose spray, and dude,
It's been a tough winter for you, hey, buddy?
Just not with it. And he's so funny. It always happens over the weekends. You'd think that this would happen on a Monday and you'd be getting over it, but it doesn't. It always starts like on a Friday. And then it gets the worst is on Saturdays and Sundays. So, yeah, it was not as much fun as I wanted it to be. But, yeah, I was a total trooper playing hurt.
Yeah, boy.
Hey, good for you. So in Song of Solomon, chapter 2, verse 15.
It's a Song of Solomon or Song of Songs?
I don't know. I said Song of Solomon.
Yeah.
Do we get a vote right now?
All in favor of Song of Solomon, say yes.
Yes.
Wow.
Okay.
Wow.
I'm not even going to vote yes because I don't
See,
know
in my
anymore.
Bible,
I'm gonna
it's
say
Song of
Songs.
Song of Songs. But whatever. I don't really think it matters.
Okay.
But Solomon wrote it. So,
Right.
yes. He of many wives.
Yes. And in this
He knew how to catch foxes.
particular passage, we have, in different translations, we've got the man speaking versus the woman speaking, and you preached it as the woman speaking.
Song of Songs 2:15.
Yes.
Yes. So if you look at the NIV, it will say that those words are from the man. But the ESV has them from the woman. The Net Bible, which, by the way, is one of the best translations of the Bible there is. You can go online, use it.
You like it,
NET,
hey?
the New English Translation. I think it's fantastic because it gives you the translation notes in it. But they do it as the woman. The New Living Translation actually has it not as the man or the woman. They have it as the daughters of Jerusalem saying to the man and woman something else, because every once in a while in this song you get the third party joining in the song. One of the challenges in interpretation of Song of Songs is that there's no quotation marks around. The author didn't do it like a Shakespeare play where they have the first person, the title for the oh my goodness, my brain is not working.
Yeah,
Do you know what I'm talking about? The name of the person, and then followed by the...
It's not like, hey, Solomon said this.
Yeah, so this is Solomon's line, and then this is the lady's line and stuff. So you kind of have to figure out which lines are whose by just sort of figuring it out. So there's some debate about the different places, and this is one of those places. Historically, it's been taken as a woman saying these words. So the NIV did make it a bit of a departure in kind of 1984 when they translated that. And there's some reasons for why they did that. You can read it that way and understand it that way. There's a whole lot of discussion about about what the foxes are and whether or not this is actually what is she or he calling for them to do. So one of the viewpoints is, well, it's just a game, right? He's calling her to play a game. If you take this as a man speaking, it's that he's calling her to play a game with him. So their love is going to be like a game, and fox catching was a game for these folks at this day, right? My problem is that that doesn't make any sense of the fact that it says he's going to ruin the vineyards, right? So it just seems to me that you're supposed to be stopping something that is ruining the vineyard, and the vineyard is quite obviously a metaphor for their romantic relationship. Mm-hmm. So it seems to make the most sense to take it as the woman speaking, and she's urging him to catch the dangers to their romantic love.
Jeff, not a lot of people preach from the Song of Songs. What was the motivation for choosing a passage like this to include in the Modern Family series?
Song of Songs is great because it's about romance, which is, of course, I think I made mention of it in my sermon that we tend to think that romance is the only people who have something to say about it are the sex counselors of our day, right? And that the Bible is so repressive and backward and stupid, and only after the sexual revolution of the 1960s have we actually figured out how this whole thing works, and we need to forget the ages gone by and embrace the new day. And part of my reason for having Song of Songs, at least something from it in this series, was to show that actually the Bible has an awful lot to say about sex and sexuality, has an awful lot to say about romance, and even something as simple as that. And I think we should turn to the scriptures to find our answers for these things, as opposed to trying to turn to Dr. Phil or Ellen DeGeneres or whoever it is these days.
Let me ask you a question, though. Would you ever do, just go through the entire book?
I would.
Yeah.
I would. I think it's, you have to be careful. And here's why. That the imagery that's used here is beautiful. And sometimes by preaching it, you end up removing the imagery, right, in order to make it make sense to people. So you're trying to explain the metaphors and stuff, and in so doing, you kind of ruin the metaphor. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Like
the beauty of it is, there are sections in here where like when they end up consummating their relationship, there are, she's I use the language, right? She's urging him to come into her garden and eat of its choice fruits, and that's a way better phrase than what's commonly used in our culture to describe the sexual act. And so in order for me to explain that, I have to now say, well, what she really means here is, and then I have to turn it into its basest. And that's kind of the beauty of it. So yes, we should preach it, of course. All scripture is given by inspiration of God, is profitable for reproof, correction. So probably in this day and age, it would be helpful for us to preach or to teach stuff from Song of Songs. It's just that it's beautiful. It's a beautiful way of talking about sex and sexuality and romantic love, and it's better than the way that our pornographic culture does. And my temptation sometimes for us as preachers, and I've heard sermon series on it, is to actually borrow modern language, which is so base and disgusting for some of these things, and ruin the flowery, beautiful metaphors that are actually used here. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I don't know, but I'd be happy to do a sermon series on it.
Well, we had a recording error and lost some of the recording, but we're going to jump back in. Andy, you were talking about foxes and some of the things Jeff was talking about this weekend.
Yeah, on the sermon, Jeff mentioned 3 foxes that need to be caught. And the first one is the fox of the perfect soulmate, which I have found in my years of ministry, particularly working with young adults, is that this is a major fox, if you will, that needs to get caught, not only pre-marriage, but especially once you're married.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's why I think I was trying to make that point that, it colors your expectations for what marriage is supposed to look like. And that was kind of my big point, is that it's easy. If you marry your perfect soulmate, then marriage is easy. That love is easy, and
that's the idea out there in our culture.
The person is going to, it's going to be easier than the person that you've been with now. Just think about all the romantic comedies when it comes to this, because what you've got is a bunch of, in those romantic comedies, somebody's always involved with someone else, right? And it's difficult on some level, and then they meet the one, the person that they're supposed to be with. Dude, I can't remember the Notebook story, but I want to think it's like this. No?
Oh, yeah, totally.
There's a bunch of 3-4 dudes in a room.
Sorry, man.
Yeah.
I got no help here.
Mulder, what do you got, man?
Sort of. Yeah, there's the lady, Rachel McAdams' character they meet this, I can't remember exactly. She's dating some dude, and I don't know, totally, I'm going to get totally murdered for this summary, but
every woman who's listening to this right now is like, you better get this right.
Yeah, I'm totally not. I'm going to butcher it. She is dating this other dude, right, and Ryan Gosling's character is writing her all these letters and everything, right, and she doesn't get them, and then they meet again, and she's engaged to this other guy, and then she leaves him for Ryan Gosling.
Right. But this is the kind of story that, Titanic was like that. You've got Mail is like that. It's quite, Notting Hill in some ways is like this. There is this one that you're supposed to be with, and when you meet them, you owe it to yourself to abandon everybody else, because love wants what it wants.
You always often see this where they're always at the altar, right? And they're just about ready to say I do, but then the one races in, opens the doors.
Well, I just saw that one on Prison Break. That same story. That was one of the episodes.
Total. Well, Jim and Pam in The Office is the same story, right? These people are the one. They're the one for each other, and it's easy. One of the things I appreciate about The Office, though, is that when they did that, they ended up having this couple get together. They ended up actually developing a little bit of the story of this couple who's now married, who get along with each other and love each other very much, but he ends up taking a job up in Philadelphia. Do you remember as the series went on? And their marriage gets strained, right? Temptation comes their way, and they have to say no. Like, I appreciated the fact that there was a reality to what they brought to it. There was a movie years ago in the 1960s that I do not recommend you go and watch, okay? But it had a lot of cultural significance at the time, and not so much now, but it did at the time. It's called The Graduate, right? Dustin Hoffman was in it. Simon and Garfunkel, Hey, Mrs. Robinson. You know this? Okay, anyway, none of you guys know. No. Anyway, the story is this typical, not typical. At the end of the movie, though, there is a scene where he, Dustin Hoffman's character, is trying to break up a wedding. And the bride sees him, and she realizes that he's her true love. So she runs out from the altar on the guy, and the movie ends with them in the back of a bus as they're riding away from the wedding. And the filmmaker, he kept the cameras rolling, like they were supposed to finish the movie there, and they lived happily ever after kind of thing. But he decided to keep the cameras rolling while the two are sitting there, and the actors are getting kind of awkward because there's no lines. They're just sitting there, and they start looking out the window and looking, and it sort of drags on for this long period of time, and it's awesome. It's a great ending because the point is, right, so now you've got your soulmate, right? And now what?
Yeah. Because
now life happens. And the same problems that you had before are going to be the problems you have now, because you go everywhere you are. And it's a delightful kind of reality check after the end of this movie.
Well, and the thing is, though, that you find in real life when you see this play out is it's not before the altar, right? You know, you don't have these movie moments where somebody races in and says, don't marry them, you know. I'm the perfect one for you. What you find is they get married, things get tough in the marriage, right? You know, reality, like you're saying, sets in.
And then they go on Facebook.
But it's at that point where they're thinking, there was that guy and he should have raced in and he should have stopped this, but he didn't. But now I found him, and so now I need to make this right.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, that's what people think. And it ruins your expectations for marriage. It also causes some traffic because it always makes you think that there's somebody else that things would be easier with. I got to tell you, you know, in our marriages, we need to burn the ships. You remember that story about Cortez when he shows up in the New World, and some of the sailors want to go back. I don't know how true it is, but he says to the sailors, "No, we're not going anywhere. Just I want you to burn the ships. Like we're here to stay." There is a sense in marriage that's kind of the attitude that you have to have. That's part of what it means when you make vows to each other, is that you're burning the ships and you're saying, you know what? I love the old way that we did our vows, right? And in sickness and in health, in good times and in bad, I'm going to love you.
And I think you make this point, but there is the perfect soulmate. Like some people think that person doesn't exist.
They're just not perfect.
Yeah. And you'll find out that it's the one that you've committed to.
Right.
You know,
love the one you're with.
That's right. And you find out you're right. They aren't perfect, but that's what marriage is, right? It's two imperfect people coming together.
Right. Choosing to love one another. And it's going to be hard because you're two sinners who are living in close proximity. And so you clash. And this is part of the reason that I was trying to point out that, you know, that's why you can't let bitterness grow in your married relationship. You can't.
So here's the fear that I have and that I've seen with a lot of young people in our culture today. They'll hear a sermon like this and they'll go, oh, okay, I hear what you're saying. The perfect one's not out there. Marriage is tough. Therefore, I'm just going to avoid marriage.
Yeah. Yeah, that's by the way, that's not going to happen. I know we say that, but the vast majority of people are going to get married. And you don't have to get married. Being single is a very noble thing. It's great. And you can be single your whole life.
We're actually going to preach on singleness in a month.
But do you think somebody, though, should choose singleness because marriage is tough?
No. Yeah, well, no, they should choose singleness because I think, if you're going to do it scripturally, a lot of people don't choose singleness. They're God's providence is such in their life that they are thrust into it. But if you're going to choose singleness, I think that Paul's argument there is that you should choose it because you want to commit yourself to the Lord. And I think that's a noble calling.
I'm looking forward to talking this when this one comes out, because I've often, I got different pushbacks on the whole singleness thing, and particularly when we look at Adam and Eve, how we were created, what we were created for, procreation and the like. I'm interested to tease this one out with regards to singleness. I'm going to be preaching that one, I think, in 1 Corinthians 7 on singleness. One of the reasons why I'm looking forward to studying that passage more and thinking through how to preach it is that I actually think that what our churches need is a better understanding of singleness as more than just the default of those who don't get married. That's not the ideal human life. Should have included in that vision both those who are married and those who are single. Right. And one is not an unnecessary consequence of not being able to find someone. So
singleness is a gift to cherish, not a burden to carry.
And I think there can be an intentionality behind singleness. I think people... Likewise, we should also have the intentionality about marriage and understanding why we do it and what it's for, and rather than just see it as the default thing that people do because, I don't know, the Bible says not to have sex outside of marriage and I want to have sex, so I guess I should get married. That's probably also not a good enough reason to cherish marriage rather than singleness. So, I mean, maybe we can punt that conversation for later once we kind of develop it a little bit more, but I'm looking forward to preaching it because I think there is something to the fact that you can be a fully functioning, faithfully following of Jesus person.
Following of who?
of Jesus
Yeah.
who was he single?
Yeah, I think so.
Oh, really?
Okay.
Not Dan Brown says no.
Oh, yeah.
Remember
Oh, right.
Da Vinci Code and all that? He married some lady and went off to France.
Yeah, that's
but,
right. I forgot about that.
France.
Oh,
But
Nice.
but no, yeah, he was single, and that's actually one of the interesting things that we forget is that the one we follow, our Savior, was a single man.
yeah.
This is going to be a good series, Modern Family.
Yeah.
I'm looking
Right.
forward to this continuing on.
Can I add one more fox?
Yeah,
that
yeah, we
should
need
be
the
caught?
fourth.
Actually, that should have been worked into all of them. We had a conversation a week ago, not on the podcast, but we do a sermon review and preview stuff. And during our sermon preview, one of the things we were talking about was one of the interpretations of this passage is that when commentators are trying to identify the fox itself, there's some evidence to suggest that what she, the woman in this passage, is calling for from Solomon in particular is to avoid his interest in other women because he's got lots of wives. And so there's some historical interpretation there, and actually some links that people have put together that would argue that actually the fox stuff probably does include her saying, yeah, but you have all these other wives. You have to catch these foxes, these dangers to our love, right? I mean, I'm not going to share you with all these others, which is an interesting interpretation. I certainly think that can be certainly a fox in our culture, especially. And I mean, the presence of pornography and the draw of and the allure of others on the married relationship is and the love relationship that you have with your spouse is a huge deal these days. And I know a lot of men's ministry and stuff, that seems to be the case these days. All they ever talk about is porn, or at least that's the way it's seen. And yet at the same time, you kind of feel like in public places, even on our podcast and stuff, we don't ever really talk enough, I think, about the dangers of it, because quite honestly, our whole society is being pornographized. I don't know, it's not a word, right? But
Objectified.
It's affecting everything. And the fact that somebody can go off and look at pornography all the time really does, it has huge effects on people's romantic relationship, especially, and expectations for what that romantic relationship should look like.
Well, and even in our culture, how we've transitioned from talking about pornography to pornos to porn, and now porn is just a word you use to talk about something that's like super tempting, like food porn.
Yeah.
I'm going to put a post on Facebook of like, here's some word porn for you, which is like we've totally changed this word to make it not just like a taboo thing, but it's something to be desired.
Yeah.
Or definitely taking the stigma out of it, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Interestingly enough, little plug here for the Apologetics Canada Conference. We're going to be talking on different types of dehumanization, and one of those is exactly what you said, Greg, that slide from pornography to porno to porn, right? And then the objectification of women. And in fact, there was an article recently about how young boys, have skipped from, kissing at dating to straight to sex and dating. And you see this idea, I even think personally, I think it has a lot to do with the rape culture that's going on in our culture as well. And that I believe the latest stats were 1 in 3 of women that head off to university will be assaulted at some level sexually. And to me,
that's like an epidemic.
That's horrible.
That's not just I mean, talk about a social ill that should be just spoken from the treetops about how horrible it is. It's just
1
crazy.
in 3.
And it probably fits under an umbrella of boys will be boys.
Well, that's the problem, isn't it? Well, when you have a porn culture
that's the thing, though, is that
it's as deep as it is.
The pornography, by its very nature, dehumanizes the women involved in it, right? I mean, even the way that they do, even the way that they do, oftentimes the airbrushing and all of that sort of stuff, it ends up creating them into plastic playthings, and the way that a lot of the stuff is done treats them as animalistic. I mean, I've read some articles about even the poses and other things like that, just that make them look animalistic and base and degrading at every point. So it is a man who is using that image for his own gratification is not treating that person as an actual person. They're
right.
treating it as an instrument to be used. And that kind of thinking, I think that's what you're saying, Andy, that kind of thinking bleeds over into regular life. I've counseled
Absolutely
young
it
men
does.
who have that attitude. Even when they get married, they get frustrated even with their spouse, their early spouse, because they're like, well, I'm going to be honest, our sexual life is not like I expected it to be. I expected it to be a lot more like rambunctious and stuff. And I've asked them, well, where'd you get that idea from? And in quiet rooms, it's like, well, actually, a lot of things I've watched before. Yeah. And so, and
even in the movies, right? You don't need the hardcore porn.
But this is, porn. I read an article recently that said several of the porn sites are starting like lessons on how one that this is the way we should relate to one another sexually. And that the dehumanization that is part of that whole thing. That's what frightens me, and that's what drives the rape culture. At least a significant aspect of it drives the rape culture, the hookup culture, all of that stuff. And it is killing our married relationships. It's killing the expectations we have for our married relationships, and I get very concerned for the future.
There's a great documentary on this, by the way, called Over 18. If you get a chance to take a look at that. One of the things, too, that this is just maybe a side, I don't know, but the thing that I find quite frightening about it, or that I think is very interesting, speaking to just the human depravity, is that in this pornography, you have people that it speaks to the humans like this. That there is a base level in humanity that enjoys the dehumanization of another individual, of objectifying a human being to their pleasure. Yeah. Which I think really speaks to how deep sin runs in us with marring the image of God in another human being.
Right. Well, that's one of the not solutions, but one of the ways that you can fight pornography in your life is to humanize the objects, to realize that they're someone's daughter, right, or son. Or they're a person who has hopes and dreams and who has been thrust perhaps into the circumstances that they've been thrust into, maybe either against their will or maybe it is their will to do it, but because of the financial challenges that they faced, right?
Mm-hmm. It's to put in a perspective of to say it's hard to sit in a service listening to the guy from IJM talk about the horrors of sex slavery across the world, and then go home that night and watch porn and have no disconnect.
Right.
To not realize that actually by me participating in this, I am participating in an industry that preys on people for money and for financial purposes.
I just want to give a shout out there to fathers here. One of the things you need to understand if you're raising sons, and I'm one of those, I have 2 little boys. I heard that the age where porn is first introduced to young boys is 8 years old.
It's like 8 to 11 or so.
It's
getting younger and younger.
Because I had people push back on me because we have filters in our house, right? Yeah. And I was getting pushback. Why would you do that? I'm like, why would you not do that?
Yeah. And they can be a great tool. Some of the filters can be a great tool. It's also, it's hard in the present world because of so much internet capable stuff that you can, even there, we have to be able to teach our children and ourselves how we can navigate a world with so much temptation. We live in a world, let's just be honest, that is different than any that has come before us when it comes to sexual temptation.
And it's changing daily.
And I think we should be honest and say the Lord knows the stuff of which we're made. And so I think he has a lot of grace on us in this day for these things. And yet at the same time, let's fight the good fight when it comes to that. There are a lot of people who are listening out, who are listening to us right now who are struggling with something like pornography or sexual sin of some variety. And you need to know that God is a gracious God who welcomes home repentant sinners over and over and over and over and over again. And so we need to glory in the gospel because of that, but then we also need to take up arms against this oppressor, right?
Amen.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah,
for that discussion. There's a lot of good things there. We're gonna wrap it up for this week. If you have any questions, you can email those to extra@northview.org.
I think we should mention this is John's first time on the podcast, first time hosting.
Yep.
Can we just give him a hand?
Well,
Like
they're not going to
clap.
Oh, I'm not going to hear them.
Don't worry, John. They're not.
John's
they're not
gonna-
clapping.
John's
Oh,
going to be
good,
back
good.
in the future. I totally thrust John into this position actually 2 minutes before we started to record. And
true.
said, John, you're hosting this week. Have fun.
That's still 2 minutes, though.
So
That's solid.
Hey, I'm not Superman.
That's-
20 seconds.
I think especially, like we said last week, if you have questions that are good follow-up from the weekend sermon that you heard, we will look at the questions. We have people that look through them for us early in the week on the Monday. So if you hear something from the sermon you want to talk about, just email extra@northview.org, even when you're finished the service, and say, hey, I'd like some follow-up on this point that was made. That would be a real help for us.
Okay. Thanks. See you in the church on weekend. That's what I said. So this was it.
See you at church on the weekend?
Is that? I think that's what I was supposed to say. Was it?
Well, that's what I have said in the past when I host.
Yeah. Well, it didn't come out.
Mulder needs a catchphrase.
I need a sign off.
Mulder's catchphrase should be wiggity whack.
Wiggity, 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 whack.